And increasingly, there's a huge trend.
Why, as a business leader, prioritising purpose alongside profits is important?
It's genuinely EBITDA enhancing. You're going to retain your team. You're going to attract talent. You're going to create innovation. Come to us because of that purpose-led mission. European consumer, unless you start to adopt some new strategy. If you don't do this, you're going to be left behind. If we hadn't had this, we wouldn't have won it.
Making purpose profitable.
This is Thinking Forwards by Webgains, a podcast series to encourage progress in the affiliate channel. Join our team and our guests as we delve into and dissect some really important topics. It's time to think forwards. On with the podcast.
All right, okay, so today we're going to be delving deep into the topic of making purpose profitable. And I think this is a great topic for us to dissect. The traditional view, or this historical view, was that profit and purpose was kind of mutually exclusive and they didn't necessarily go hand in hand. We're obviously here to disprove that. So my first question for you, Richie, is how have you defined purpose at Vast?
That's a good question. Good one to start with.
Yep.
So we went on a bit of a mission to define our actual kind of mission statement for the business itself. And that's underpinned by our company values as well. But the crucial bit that we had to really focus on was whether it's commercially marketable. So we looked at, because we partner with brands to sell direct to consumer, we had to look at what is the consumer market doing itself. And there's this massive kind of trend where consumers are obviously buying from purpose-led brands, like a mission statement. Why does a consumer choose IKEA over another one? Why do they choose Patagonia over another brand? And this is a massive trend that's not only a consumer trend, but also, crucially, there is legislation on the way as well that is driving the challenges of, say, things like greenwashing, those kind of things. So we took all those factors, put it into our mission statement, also really cognizant of this is an amazing acquisition tool from a recruitment point of view as well, and a retention tool as well. So we set about on that whole mission. It took us about 7-8 months to actually finally get to it. It was highly collaborative within the business, and then got to the point where our mission statement is done, our values are done, and now that's kind of fully aligned with us fully applying for our B Corp now, which is really good.
Amazing. So you saw a real shift in the marketplace and the consumer buying habits, and that's really also driven some of your decisions to go on a purpose-led journey.
Yeah, I feel like we literally have had no choice. Yeah. And fundamentally, just on a personal level as well, just knowing that we're doing something to address the challenges that the planet faces, but also creating a better kind of legacy as well in terms of how things are done. Because one part of our business is actually software as a service. So we have a whole software development piece of what we're doing. So we're able to codify purpose-led mission, which is really cool. And being here in Bristol as well, it's a big purpose-led capital, but also an AI capital as well. The amount of funding that is washing in, there's a real opportunity for us to collaborate. We're busy talking to Bristol Uni at the moment, coming up with the concept of like ethical AI, and it turns all the concepts of it on its head around the normal kind of thing that Silicon Valley do, which is just like growth at any cost. We've got to be really ethical, and the consumer will be expecting that going forward. So I think the brands that are going to win in the future are the ones with really clear and simple messaging around that. And we realised we just had to adopt that. And the proof in the pudding for us already has been the brands that we were talking to that are B Corp already are beside themselves with excitement about collaborating with us. But then crucially, we've already been on this mission with GDPR, believe it or not. I know it's a weird analogy, but the compliance piece that brought in demonstrates we're winning pitches because we went ISO certified before anybody else did as well, because we've already in front of the market. So for us, purpose-led is an absolute no-brainer.
I think that's a really good point, that a lot of businesses are already doing positive things naturally, and B Corp is a really nice umbrella that encapsulates all of those things under one certification. Yeah,
I'll give you a literal example of that, right? So we've got one brand. So our mission statement is building brand equity. That's our core kind of element to what we do. We've got we were doing it anyway. So if we're protecting brands, we're actually trying to avoid markdown if we can. We're all about optimizing those full price sales because it's better for brand. You don't want to be necessarily in sale all the time. The result of that is we ended up with a brand that went from a 56% markdown percentage on their profit, on their stock full year, to last year went to 76. And that's just a great example. That'll be less product ending up in landfill because it was a spontaneous purchase that perhaps they didn't need at the time. So it's a real challenge, but brands love that because you're actually driving the incremental brand equity as well. It's not just a saving the planet kind of angle, which is good.
Anything to add around why, as a business leader, prioritising purpose alongside profits is important? Is there anything else? You know, you're in a powerful decision-making position. Why is it so important to prioritise it?
I think if I look at some of the younger people we're employing now as well, some of our newest hires, they've come to us because of that purpose-led mission. Some of the, especially on our kind of paid media side of things, that's a really hotly contested market to try and get people into the business with. And if they're eyeing up working with just another, mass market agency or whatever versus our full-blown 360 top to bottom, we go from supply chain, customer service, all the way through to the paid media side and the online experience. If they're weighing up those two businesses, they want to work somewhere where they know they can make a difference. And I think, we've got things like an ethical advertising policy that we're working on, those kind of concepts where we can start to use our influence to lobby changes if needed in the industry.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it's a real opportunity for people to come and work with us and collaborate. And yeah, we've got one of our values is come as you are, never stop learning. It's deliberately a Nirvana lyric, by the way, but it's the whole concept is people can just come along and contribute and feel themselves, but we want to hear their views and what the next steps could be for the business, really.
We hope you're enjoying the show. If any of what was said in Thinking Forwards has resonated with you, or if you're looking to unlock more revenue in the affiliate channel, and let's face it, who isn't? Or even if you'd like to be a guest on a future episode, we'd love to talk. Head to our website, www.webgains.com, or email our team at hello@webgains.com, and we'll continue the conversation. Thanks again for listening. Enjoy the second half of the pod.
Sam, you obviously worked with me very closely on the B Corp, our B Corp certification, everything from our technical carbon footprint to supplier code of conduct. For you as a business leader at Webgains, why do you think it's important to be prioritising purpose alongside profits?
Because they kind of naturally align, or they can naturally align within a business. So for us, obviously, for me in my role, Webgains as an affiliate network uses a lot of compute, like a significant amount of compute in regards to offering all the services we do to all of our advertisers and publishers. So what that means is obviously dealing with large amounts of energy usage, and that obviously has an environmental impact because of the carbon footprint that we leave behind or we use in that regard on a daily basis. And so ever since I joined Webgains, it was quite important to me to get that under control because as old software and old technologies did not care for that, and AI technologies use it in abundance more than any other technology. So those obviously are quite key changes that we're seeing, and so we're seeing a greater use or requirement for compute. And so therefore it's important that we kind of bake into what we do, reducing that as much as possible, and by being efficient effectively. So operationally efficient at every stage in regards to our platform and services. And what that does is, we're able to reduce our carbon footprint. I think we've reduced it by around 65% in the last year, and significantly dropped it down just by applying some key operational efficiencies. And the benefit to Webgains is we've reduced our cost at the same time. So we've not only reduced the carbon footprint that we're generating for every transaction, for every ad that we show, or publisher link that we use, but we're actually, so we're able to increase our margins, improve our efficiency as a business, and reduce carbon footprint. And so that kind of very clearly lines up the benefits of both, being purpose-driven and it leading to greater profits. And so I think that's it doesn't always need to be, people think about things like B Corp and they think about the environment in terms of energy usage in an office. They think about kind of areas which are kind of more obvious to us as consumers. They don't necessarily think about some of the bigger business elements that are in motion that you should be tackling, because that has obviously a bigger impact overall environmentally, or through things like, in terms of sustainability or employment in that regard, in terms of keeping people retained in a role and etc. And those are all key elements that I think we learned and we definitely improved upon through our journey with B Corp. Sure.
Yeah, great. I often refer to it as the invisible carbon footprint that a digital business might carry, and I think part of the beauty of this podcast is sharing our experiences and bringing these topics to light and encouraging other businesses to also kind of reflect on their own operations and what they can do differently that might bring more positive change to business operations. And I think on a similar vein, I mean, we've started talking about B Corp, but let's discuss this a bit more. Obviously, this has been a passion project for Webgains for a number of years, and it's great, Richie, that, vvast is also going through it. And it sounds like you've done the bulk of the work, which is great. But it would be, I'd love to hear more about your B Corp journey, highs and lows, challenges.
Yeah.
Is there any? Yeah. What can you share with us about that?
It's not for the faint-hearted. That's for sure, as you well know. So it took a lot longer than we thought it would do, but I think we were saying earlier that the great thing about it is we were doing a lot of the things already. So that whole point around building decent brand equity, we weren't doing naughty things that are going to be trashing the planet or doing unethical things anyway, which is quite useful. So for us, in a way, it's almost like kind of documenting that. But what is amazing, I've found, because we fully submitted now, so in theory the tough bit's done. What has been amazing though is it's given us this brilliant framework that we can now communicate internally to the team on how we actually deliver this piece. Because for us, the actual moment of the rubber hitting the road, in effect, is when we actually talk to our brands and say, we've already switched out some of our brands from things like single-use packaging on their what they ship the products in. We've reduced things like carbon miles on product. We had one brand, something was being manufactured in Poland. We discovered it was then going to China, and then it was going to the US, and then it ended up in our warehouse in Amsterdam. So we corrected that. There's now a nice lorry that goes directly, just things like that, the little mistakes that are being made. But now the real point is, because we've got a ready-made playbook and how we deliver with the brands, we're able to kind of pepper in these concepts. We've got 3 pillars of how we deliver it. One of them is data in retail. So again, that's how can we use things like tracking markdown full price mix, having targets on that and sharing that with the brand, because not only is it better for brand equity, it's better for the planet. Another one is ethical advertising. So maybe less impressions shown against some of the really heavily discounted products. And then the other one is all around the kind of what you'd cliche B Corp being associated with, which is sustainability. So it is those switching out. But we've got a plan where we're going to be switching out around about 35% of all of our shipments will go last mile via those pedal e-bikes. You might have seen them knocking around, the Zedify ones. That's going to reduce carbon emissions hugely, because at the moment, if you compare it to like even an electric van, it just obviously hammers down the amount contributed. So that bit's happening as we speak, and I'm really excited by that. And I think our brands are really, really engaged in that sort of journey as well, which is good.
That's
I think they are. They love it. Which is brilliant.
That's great. And I think the pillars that you've mentioned, that has the ability to have real impact on your clients that you're working with. And I think that's the other thing that was really apparent about certainly our journey with B Corp, is it really forces you to look at actual actions that you should be taking as a business and the impact that will have. And, as we were chatting earlier, like, a lot of companies are already doing some really good things, and it is that really nice umbrella. But I think it's important to have that opportunity to reflect, because unless you know where you're actually at as a business, it's very difficult to set goals. It's very difficult to actually monitor those improvements. So I think it's really important to go through the process, so you have that almost starting point. I mean, although for Webgains it was a couple of years before we actually got the certification, we now look at it as it's just the start for us.
Yep.
So we've got loads of initiatives that we're planning. It's B Corp month coming up in March, which is a nice opportunity to engage with people that might be less aware of B Corp and what it means, and talk about it within the industry. But I think I'm super happy that you guys are going for it, and it sounds like it's really aligned to culturally what you're doing as a business, and ultimately building a more resilient business that is able to navigate the difficulties of current economic
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we
Yeah.
feel like we kind of got away with it just in time in terms of, if you think about supply chains and that kind of stuff. Some of our newest brands we've won, if we hadn't had this, we wouldn't have won it.
There been much pushback in terms of the clients you're working with or the brands you're working with? I mean, obviously you can choose not to work with them, but I guess it's like anything, right? Then take in terms of that. So has that been an interesting challenge?
Yeah, we're incumbent on those brands a lot of the time adopting that thinking. That's the key thing. But the West Coast US brands are more of a challenge because they're not familiar with the concept of single-use production. But we explain that you're not going to win a European consumer unless you start to adopt some of these strategies. And also, there's legislation literally coming. There's greenwashing this year, and then there's going to be next year, 25, that legislation as well around supply chain.
Yeah.
They unless they've got things like e-passports for their product at SKU level, they can't enter the country. So it's a good way of.
Yeah.
That's where legislation is helpful. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Definitely.
So it works in multi-layers in that regard. Then in terms of the market moving with it.
Yeah, and you can turn it into a marketing tool as well. I mean, one of our newest sites we launched, we reduced the carbon footprint of that, to your point again, by 80%, and the brand is now using that as hey, check out our new website, by the way. Don't feel as guilty because it's not producing as much carbon as it was. Yeah, that kind of angle, probably put slightly more eloquently than that, by the way. But that kind of marketing is really helpful for a brand to be able to say that. Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
it's interesting.
And for those out there who might be kind of more skeptical or see initiatives like B Corp as more of a tick box exercise, what advice or what would you say to them?
I mean, it becomes a living and breathing being in your team. It really does. And I think if you're treating it as a tick box exercise, a bit like any certification of merit, like an ISO as well, we're actually getting recertified today. That is it's important. It's a living thing, and there's already obviously some very public examples of where B Corp they've lost it. So it's an enforceable certification that you will lose it and often. I think you probably guessed the one I'm alluding to. It's a brewing business. That one is a really good example where they didn't. The challenges they've had is around churn with the team because they're not looking after them on the ethics and the recruitment side of things, right? Yeah. Not even the most obvious things. So I think it's really important that you, with the team, especially, you bring it to life. And I think when you first get a B Corp as well, it's usually fairly low scores because you just scraped over to get into the actual realm of it. And I think the real mission then is to go. I met someone at a conference the other day, and their B Corp's up around 150. And I was like, that was a proper Wayne's World we're not worthy moment because that's just like phenomenal to achieve that. So that's the mission. Is to get
into the business.
Get into triple digits and really go for it. That's the trick.
Yeah. How would you support or suggest that someone sells purpose to the boardroom? So what tips would you give them if they were trying to take either B Corp or doing more purpose-led initiatives to the boardroom? Yeah,
it's a good question. I mean, because without profit, you don't have a business to actually create purpose. I think, but there's a definite kind of well-trodden historic path of uncoupling those two things. And I think I mentioned IKEA earlier because I'm excited by those guys because they've just announced their full year 23 results of growing 31% year on year, but their carbon footprint has shrunk by 24%. And that's not just carbon offsetting. This is genuine actions they're taking. So it's a great example at scale with a supply chain that must be so sprawling that you can do that, and obviously it's affecting the consumer. They're deciding to shop there, which is even more compelling. So when you're selling it in, it's all about if you don't do this, you're going to be left behind. And I think increasingly where the consumer's going, they're going to be hunting out these brands. It's no longer a premium thing as well. Again, the IKEA is a great example of mass market adoption. So I think it's a future-proof your business moment. And I think it's genuinely EBITDA enhancing. You're going to retain your team. You're going to attract talent. You're going to create innovation. You're going to be able to do things that are just so in the zeitgeist at the moment. It's a thing that's going to help the bottom line without a doubt.
Yeah, completely agree. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Thinking Forwards with Webgains. If you want to hear more about the content that we've discussed, then head over to webgains.com and get in touch.